The committee will come to order. Would you please close the doors? The Oversight Committee exists to secure two fundamental principles. First, Americans have a right to know that the money Washington takes from them is well spent. And second, Americans deserve an efficient, effective government that works for them. Our duty on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee is to protect these rights. Our solemn responsibility is to hold government accountable to taxpayers, because taxpayers have a right to know what they get from their government. It's our job to work tirelessly in partnership with citizen watchdogs to deliver the facts to the American people and bring genuine reform to the Federal bureaucracy. This is our mission. Today, we are dealing with exactly that kind of a situation. The IG's report, issued yesterday, began with watchdogs and whistleblowers making us aware of a fatally flawed operation known as Fast and Furious. Before I begin with my opening statement in earnest, I want to first take time to thank Mr. Horowitz. On behalf of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, I want to congratulate him on, in fact, delivering an extremely comprehensive, strong, and independent report. Mr. Horowitz is not new to the Department, but he's new to this job. And as Inspector General, a Senate-confirmed nomination of March 29th, and when you were sworn in on August 16th, we all asked the question, can you pick up and do this kind of a job on such a monumental task that had already languished for a period of time before your entrance? Yesterday, you proved to both sides of the aisle that you could, and I want to personally thank you. I note that, in fact, IGs serve a purpose that, in fact, we do not get and have not gotten from any administration, if not for the 74 IGs and the 12,000 men and women that work for them. The level of transparency, accountability over waste, fraud, abuse of power, abuse of discretion, and the like would not be possible. This committee, more than any other in the Congress, relies on their work. And yesterday, we were not disappointed. The 471-page report released yesterday is a huge step forward toward restoring the public faith in the Department of Justice. I was impressed with the professionalism and thoroughness and scope of the report. I know, having been only the day before with Brian Terry's family in Arizona, where we dedicated the Border Patrol station he worked out of before his untimely murder in 2010, that they too undoubtedly were impressed that a great deal of the closure they wanted by responsible parties at all levels was met yesterday. The conclusions after 19 months of hard work, of course, are greater than some would want and fall short of what others would want. They cannot, by definition, bring complete closure because even the IG in his report still has some questions. There were some individuals and some documents that are not yet available. But like any document, you have to at some point cut it off, come as you are, and bring what you have. I think this was the appropriate time. I'm particularly pleased that we waited an additional week to allow for materials that otherwise might not have been in the report. This committee has had a difficult relationship with justice, much of it because the Attorney General, no matter how many times we asked, no matter how many times we subpoenaed, no matter how many meetings our staff had, were unable to get the level of cooperation necessary even to the information that the IG received. I hope in the next Congress, whoever sits in my chair will face an administration that understands that openness to Congress, openness to the Freedom of Information Act, and particularly openness to the Inspector General's offices is critical if the American people are to have confidence in their government. Much of what is in the report, but not the main subject of the report, has to do with the February 4, 2011 letter, in which, admittedly now, Justice Department falsely stated that in Operation Fast and Furious, guns did not walk. As I have often said since that time, the only way that statement could be true is if you believed for guns to walk, they had to have legs. Operation Fast and Furious is a poster child for what you don't do with deadly weapons. You don't lose track of them. You don't allow more and more and more of them to go. Well, in fact, you're already seeing the effects of those weapons killing people in Mexico. And let us make no mistake, weapons had already been found at deadly scenes of crimes in Mexico before Fast and Furious shut down. Only the tragic loss of Brian A. Terry brought an end to Fast and Furious. Although this report will not bring a complete end to the need for us to work with Justice to bring genuine reform to their process, it goes a long way toward that. I will particularly note that I am pleased that in some cases the executive privilege invalidly claimed by the President of the United States was not asserted in this discovery. Some materials contained in this report do help us because they are, in fact, many of the items that we wish we had received. In some cases, we're told we received, but in fact, we later found were provided to the IG and not to us. The conclusions in any report by an IG are, in fact, respectful and less than conclusions as to what management must do. But already, since yesterday, 2 top individuals whose time to resign had come 14, 16, 18, 19 months ago, resigned. We expect that all 14 would find a way to find appropriate new occupations, ones in which their poor judgment or lack of dedication or unwillingness to actually read documents they were required to read would not be held accountable. There is no place in our government for people who under statute are required to do something and then say, I didn't do it, but I didn't need to do it because somebody else did it below me. That's exactly why Congress puts in place a number of safeguards at what level things such as wiretaps can be authorized. For the American people who know that ultimately a wiretap application is trusted by a judge in most cases who grants it, the only protection for the American people is, in fact, knowing that there are safeguards in the application, that an agent or an individual simply can't tap your phone by running up an application. The very safeguards that failed in Fast and Furious to know what was already known and that wiretaps would tell you in no uncertain terms that guns were walking, that same lack of safeguards could also cause anyone to see their phone tapped when, in fact, it should not be under the law. So I look at the protections not granted to safeguard against a fatally flawed tactic like Fast and Furious, but I look at it to know, as the IG noted in his report, that there need to be material changes and controls in how wiretap applications go through a process for approval. Now, over the next several hours, we will hear an awful lot from our witness, and I rely on our questions to be germane to our witness's 471-page report. I believe that, in fact, given an opportunity to have fair question and answer, we will understand, first of all, why Jason Weinstein resigned yesterday, why Kenneth Melson retired yesterday, and why there is much work to be done to reform the Department of Justice and the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency in order for the American people, and I might note the people of Mexico, to have confidence in this government. Lastly, nothing in this report vindicates anyone. If you touched, looked, could have touched, could have looked, could have asked for information that could have caused you to intervene, to complain, to worry, to talk to people, and you didn't, and you are in our government, or even if you aren't in our government but were aware of it, you fell short of your responsibility. We all have a responsibility to protect against firearms ending up in the hands of dangerous criminals. With that, I want to thank again our IG for being here today, and I yield to Mr. Cummings for his opening statement.